My daughter walked 110 kilometers to my house. She arrived crying in the middle of the night. "Dad, my husband is coming after you. He drained my account and he knows about your $137 million. I just opened the safe, grabbed an envelope, and made a call. It's time to execute the plan." Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. The sound of bare knuckles against my front door at 3 in the morning should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest as I pulled on my robe and walked toward the entrance. I had been expecting this moment for years, though not quite like this. When I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. Aria stood there, my 32-year-old daughter, but she looked like a ghost of herself. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her feet were bleeding through what remained of her shoes, and her face was streaked with tears and exhaustion. She had walked 68 miles to reach me. "Daddy," she whispered, and then collapsed into my arms. I helped her inside, my mind racing as I noticed the way she favored her left ankle, the way her hand shook uncontrollably. This wasn't just exhaustion. This was terror. "Aria, what happened? Where's Anthony?" I asked as I guided her to the couch, though part of me already knew the answer would confirm my worst fears. She looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of the little girl who used to run to me after nightmares. "He's coming, Dad. Anthony is coming here, and he's so angry. He emptied my bank account completely. Everything is gone, and he knows about your money. He knows about the $137 million. My blood ran cold. Those words I had hoped never to hear. For 8 years, since Anthony married my daughter, I had been waiting for this shoe to drop. I had seen the signs from the very beginning, the way he asked too many questions about my finances, the way he isolated Aria from me gradually, methodically. "How long has he known?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady for her sake. "I don't know, maybe months. He's been acting strange, asking me weird questions about your business, your investments. Last week he started demanding I call you more often, wanted me to visit you and ask about your retirement plans." Her voice broke. "Dad, I think he's been planning this for a long time." I stood up slowly, my joints protesting. At 62, I wasn't the man I used to be, but my mind was still sharp, sharper than Anthony could ever imagine. "Aria, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Go upstairs to your old room. Take a shower. Put on some of your old clothes that are still in the closet. Don't come downstairs until I call for you, no matter what you hear." "But Dad, you don't understand. He's dangerous when he's angry. He threw things, he screamed at me, and when I tried to leave, he blocked the door. I had to sneak out through the back while he was on the phone with someone." She grabbed my arm. "I heard him talking about making you pay for lying to him. What did he mean?" I looked at my daughter, this beautiful woman who had been systematically destroyed by a man I had never trusted. The guilt I had carried for years pressed down on me like a weight. I should have stopped this marriage. I should have found a way to make her see who Anthony really was. "There are things you don't know, sweetheart, things I've been protecting you from." I walked to the old painting above the fireplace, the one Aria had given me for Father's Day when she was 12. Behind it was a safe I had installed 15 years ago. My fingers worked the combination automatically. Inside were documents, photographs, and a thick manila envelope that had been waiting for this exact moment. I pulled out the envelope and turned back to Aria. "Dad, what is that?" Instead of answering, I walked to the landline phone in the kitchen. Aria followed me, limping slightly. I dialed a number I had memorized but never hoped to use. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Mitchell here. It's Scott Harrison, codename Phoenix." My voice was steady, professional. "It's time to execute the plan." "Copy that, Phoenix. All units are in position." "How long do we have?" I looked out the window at the empty street, then at Aria's confused and frightened face. "He'll be here within the hour, maybe less if he's driving as recklessly as I think he is." "Roger, phase 1 is a go. We'll be monitoring." I hung up and turned to face my daughter. Her mouth was open, staring at me like she was seeing a stranger. "Dad, who was that? What plan? What's codename Phoenix?" I set the envelope on the kitchen counter and looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was so thin, thinner than she had been at our last dinner together 6 months ago. There were dark circles under her eyes, and I noticed a faint yellow bruise on her wrist that she was trying to hide with her sleeve. "Aria, How long has Anthony been hurting you? She froze. He doesn't hurt me. He just gets frustrated sometimes. The economy has been hard on his business, and he's under a lot of pressure. That's not what I asked. For a moment, she looked like she might lie again. Then her shoulders sagged. It started about 2 years ago, just pushing at first when he got really angry. Then it got worse after he lost that big contract last year. My hands clenched into fists. 2 years. She had been suffering for 2 years while I sat in this house, waiting and planning when I should have acted sooner. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you never liked him. I thought you would just say you told me so. Tears started flowing again. And because he said, if I ever told anyone, he would make sure you lost everything. He said he had dirt on you, that he could destroy your reputation. The manipulation was even deeper than I had realized. Anthony hadn't just been planning to steal from me. He had been systematically breaking down my daughter's ability to trust anyone, even her own father. Aria, I need you to go upstairs now. What's about to happen, you don't need to see. What do you mean? Dad, you're scaring me. I picked up the envelope and walked toward the stairs, guiding her with me. 8 years ago, when Anthony first started dating you, I hired someone to investigate him. What I found made me realize I needed to be very careful, very patient. Anthony isn't just a bad husband, sweetheart. He's a predator. We stopped at the bottom of the stairs. In the distance, I could hear the sound of a car engine approaching fast. He's here! The headlights swept across my living room window as Anthony's car skidded into my driveway. I had maybe 3 minutes before he would be pounding on my door. Aria was safely upstairs, but I could hear her pacing in her old bedroom above me. I opened the manila envelope and spread its contents across my kitchen table. 8 years of careful documentation. 8 years of watching and waiting while my daughter fell deeper into Anthony's trap. The first photograph showed Anthony leaving a hotel with a blonde woman who wasn't my daughter. The timestamp read 3 years ago, just 6 months after he and Aria had bought their house together. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Detective Ray Mitchell had been thorough in his investigation. The manila folder contained evidence of a pattern that made my blood run cold. Anthony Reeves wasn't just an opportunistic husband looking for a wealthy father-in-law to exploit. He was a professional. The documents showed 3 previous marriages, all to women from well-off families. Sarah Chen in California, divorced after 2 years when her family's restaurant chain mysteriously went bankrupt. Jennifer Walsh in Oregon, whose father lost his construction business after Anthony convinced him to invest in several failed ventures. Monica Rivera in Arizona, who had suffered a nervous breakdown after Anthony systematically isolated her from her family and convinced her she was mentally unstable. Each marriage followed the exact same pattern. Anthony would charm his way into the family, gradually gain access to financial information, isolate his wife from her support system, and then orchestrate some kind of financial crisis that left him in control. The marriages always ended with the women having nothing and Anthony disappearing with whatever assets he could liquidate. But this time was different. This time, he had chosen the wrong family. I heard his car door slam shut with unnecessary force. Through the window, I could see him striding toward my front door, his movements sharp and aggressive. Even in the darkness, I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clenched into fists. The documents Mitchell had gathered went beyond just Anthony's marital history. There were financial records showing shell companies, fake businesses, and a network of associates who helped him execute these elaborate cons. Anthony Reeves wasn't even his real name. He was actually Anthony Kozlov, a man with a criminal record in 3 states for fraud and domestic violence. I quickly organized the most damning evidence and slipped it back into the envelope. The rest I spread out deliberately on the table, where Anthony would be sure to see it when he inevitably forced his way into my house. The pounding on my front door started exactly as I expected. Not a normal knock, but the aggressive hammering of someone who had already abandoned all pretense of civility. "Open the door, old man. I know you're in there." Anthony's voice carried clearly through the wooden door. "And I know Aria is with you." I walked slowly to the front door, taking my time. Let him get angrier. Angry people make mistakes, and I needed him to make several. "It's late, Anthony," I called through the door. "Why don't you come back in the morning when we can talk like civilized people?" "Civilized?" His laugh was harsh and bitter. "You want to talk about civilized? How civilized is it to lie to your family for years? How civilized is it to hide $137 million while your daughter struggles to pay bills?" I unlocked the door but left the chain engaged, opening it just enough to see his face. What I saw there confirmed every suspicion I had harbored for 8 years. This wasn't the charming, slightly awkward man who had courted my daughter. This was a predator whose mask had finally slipped completely. "I don't know what you're talking about, Anthony. Don't play games with me." He slammed his palm against the door, making the chain rattle. "I've seen the bank statements. I've seen the investment portfolios. I know about the offshore accounts, the real estate holdings, the stock options. You've been sitting on a fortune while Aria and I live paycheck to paycheck." That was interesting. Anthony thought he had seen my real financial records, but I had been feeding him carefully constructed false information for over a year. The $137 million he was so fixated on was a complete fabrication, designed specifically to bring him to this moment. Even if what you're saying were true, that money has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me. I'm your daughter's husband. I'm part of this family. His voice cracked slightly on the word family, and I heard something desperate underneath the anger. That desperation told me everything I needed to know. Anthony wasn't just greedy. He was in serious trouble. The kind of trouble that makes a man abandon all caution and show up at his father-in-law's house in the middle of the night, demanding money. "Where's Aria, Anthony? Why did she walk 68 miles to get here instead of driving?" For a split second, his mask slipped even further. I saw guilt flash across his face before the anger reasserted itself. "She's being dramatic. We had a disagreement about money, and she overreacted. You know how emotional she gets. I know how emotional she gets when someone empties her bank account without permission." His eyes narrowed. "She told you that? That ungrateful little—" He caught himself, but not quickly enough. "Finish that sentence, Anthony. I'd love to hear what you were about to call my daughter." The silence stretched between us. In that silence, I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much he could still salvage from this situation. "Look, Scott, we're both reasonable men. Aria doesn't understand business the way we do. I made some investments with her money, but they're solid investments. You'll see returns within the year. What kind of investments require you to empty someone's account in the middle of the night? The kind that have tight deadlines, time-sensitive opportunities." He was improvising now, and poorly. "But if you're willing to bridge the gap temporarily, I can pay her back and pay you back with interest. All I need is access to a portion of those assets you've been hiding." There it was, the real reason he was here. Anthony wasn't just desperate for money. He was desperate for a lot of money, quickly. The kind of desperation that suggested he had made promises to dangerous people. "I'll make you a deal, Anthony. You tell me exactly why you need the money so urgently, and I'll consider helping you." His jaw worked silently for several seconds. I could see him weighing his options, trying to decide how much truth he could afford to tell. "I borrowed some money to make a big investment. The investment didn't pan out the way I expected, and now I need to pay back the loan." "How much money?" $200,000. "And who did you borrow it from?" Another long pause. "People who don't accept excuses." Now I understood. Anthony had gotten involved with loan sharks, probably to fund whatever scheme he was running, before he decided to target my family's money. The pressure from his creditors was what had forced him to show his hand tonight. I closed the door and removed the chain, then opened it fully. Anthony stepped inside, his eyes immediately scanning my living room, like he was cataloging everything of value. "Thank you for being reasonable, Scott. I knew we could work this out like family." "Oh, we're definitely going to work this out," I said, leading him toward the kitchen where the documents were waiting. "But probably not the way you're expecting." Anthony's eyes widened when he saw the documents spread across my kitchen table. Bank statements, photographs, legal records, 8 years of his life laid out like evidence in a courtroom. For a moment, the cocky confidence drained from his face, replaced by something much more dangerous. "What the hell is this?" His voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the threat underneath. "Sit down, Anthony. We need to talk." "I don't think so." He grabbed one of the photographs, the one showing him with the blonde woman at the hotel. "This is illegal. You can't spy on people like this. I could have you arrested." "Could you? Under what name would you file the complaint? Anthony Reeves or Anthony Kozlov?" He went perfectly still. The photograph fluttered from his fingers to the floor. "That's right. I know who you really are. I know about Sarah Chen, Jennifer Walsh, Monica Rivera. I know about the 3 marriages, the 3 bankruptcies, the 3 families you destroyed." I picked up a thick folder from the table. "I know everything." Anthony's face had gone pale, but his eyes were calculating. I could see him trying to figure out his next move, how much he could deny, how much he could spin. Those were different situations. You don't understand the context. Help me understand then. Explain to me how you accidentally destroyed 3 families before mine. He was quiet for a long moment, then slowly sat down at my kitchen table. When he looked up at me, the mask was completely gone. This was Anthony Kozlov, professional predator, sizing up his options. "What do you want?" "I want you to tell me exactly what you've done to my daughter. Not just the financial stuff. Everything." "Or what?" I smiled, and something in that smile made him lean back in his chair. "Or I call Detective Mitchell and tell him you're here, threatening me and my daughter. He's been very patient, waiting for the right moment to arrest you. Tonight feels like the right moment." Anthony's jaw tightened. "You don't have anything on me that would stick in court. Everything I did was legal. I was married to those women. I had every right to make financial decisions." "Is that what you call emptying their bank accounts? Making financial decisions?" "I call it surviving. Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up with nothing? To watch other people live easy lives while you struggle for every dollar?" His voice was getting louder, angrier. I saw an opportunity to level the playing field, and I took it. By destroying innocent people. "Innocent?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sarah Chen inherited a restaurant chain from her daddy. She never worked a day in her life for that money. Jennifer Walsh's family made millions in the construction while paying workers minimum wage. Monica Rivera lived off a trust fund from her grandfather's oil money. They were parasites just like you." "And Aria?" For the first time, he hesitated. "Aria was supposed to be different." "Different how?" "I didn't plan to hurt her. When I first met her, I thought maybe I could actually make a normal life work. She was sweet, genuine. She actually cared about me." He ran his hands through his hair. "But then I found out about you, about the money you were hiding, and I realized this could be the score that set me up for life. So you decided to destroy her too." "I didn't want to, but I owe some very dangerous people a lot of money, and they don't care about my feelings for my wife. They want their money, or they want compensation in blood." The truth was finally coming out. Anthony wasn't just greedy, he was desperate and scared. That made him infinitely more dangerous. "How much do you really owe?" $400,000 plus interest. The $200 I told you about was just this month's payment. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What happens if you don't pay?" "They kill me. Then they kill anyone connected to me who might have access to money. That includes Aria." He looked up at me with something that might have been genuine fear. "And that includes you." "Who are these people, Anthony?" "Russians." I made the mistake of thinking I could outsmart them. I took a loan to fund what I thought was a sure thing, and when it fell through, I couldn't pay them back. They don't care about excuses. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. Everything made sense now. Anthony's increasing desperation over the past year, the way he had been pushing Aria to reconnect with me, the sudden interest in my finances. He wasn't just planning a con, he was trying to save both their lives. "When is your next payment due?" 3 days ago. My blood turned to ice. "You're telling me these people are already looking for you?" "They've been looking for me since last week. That's why I had to move fast with Aria's account. I was hoping to buy myself some time while I figured out how to get to your money." I turned back to face him. "Anthony, did you ever consider just asking for help? Explaining the situation to Aria and me instead of lying and manipulating? Would you have helped me if I had told you the truth?" That was a fair question, and one I wasn't sure I could answer honestly. I might have helped you disappear, start over, somewhere safe. These aren't the kind of people you disappear from. They have connections everywhere. The only way out is to pay them everything I owe, plus enough extra to convince them I'm more valuable alive than dead. How much would that take? $1 million, minimum. I nodded slowly, processing this information. Anthony needed $1 million to save his life and Aria's. The problem was, I didn't have $1 million. I didn't have $137 million either. I had been living comfortably on my pension and some modest investments, but I was far from wealthy. Anthony, I need to tell you something. The money you think I have, the $137 million, it doesn't exist. His face went blank. What do you mean it doesn't exist? I mean, I created false bank statements, fake investment portfolios, fictional account numbers. I fed you information designed to make you think I was wealthy when I'm not. That's impossible. I saw the documents. I verified the account numbers. You verified the account numbers I wanted you to verify. The ones that led to shells of nothing. Anthony stared at me for a long moment, then started to laugh. It was a broken, desperate sound that made my skin crawl. You're telling me that everything I've done, everything I've put Aria through, was for money that never existed? I'm telling you that I knew what you were from the day you met my daughter, and I've been setting a trap for you ever since. His laughter stopped abruptly. A trap. That's right. Every piece of financial information you thought you discovered, I planted. Every bank statement you found, I left where you would find it. I've been playing a very long game, Anthony, and tonight is checkmate. Anthony stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. You destroyed my life for nothing. No, I prevented you from destroying my daughter's life the way you destroyed 3 other women's lives. But the Russians, they're still coming. Without that money, they'll kill both of us. They'll kill Aria too, just to make a point. No, they won't. How can you be so sure? I walked back to the safe behind the painting and pulled out one more document. Because Anthony Kozlov died in a car accident 3 days ago. At least, that's what the police report says. And dead men don't owe money to anyone. Anthony stared at the police report in my hands, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, understanding. The document was official, complete with signatures and stamps, reporting the death of Anthony Kozlov in a single car accident on Interstate 45 3 days earlier. That's impossible, he whispered. I'm standing right here. Anthony Kozlov is standing here. But Anthony Kozlov officially died 3 days ago when his car went over a bridge and into the river. The body was never recovered, which isn't unusual in that particular stretch of water. You faked my death? His voice was barely audible. Detective Mitchell has some very interesting connections in various law enforcement agencies. Staging a death, when done properly and for the right reasons, isn't as difficult as you might think. Anthony sank back into his chair, staring at the report. But why? If you knew I was dangerous, why not just have me arrested? Because arresting you wouldn't solve the real problem. You said it yourself. These Russians don't accept excuses. If Anthony Kozlov had simply been arrested, they would have gone after Aria to collect their debt. But if Anthony Kozlov is dead, there's no one left to collect from. They'll figure out it's fake eventually, will they? Mitchell's people did a very thorough job. There are witnesses who saw your car go over the bridge. There's security footage from 3 different angles. There are even personal effects, wallet, jewelry, clothing, that were recovered from the water and confirmed as belonging to Anthony Kozlov. I sat down across from him and slid the police report across the table. As far as the world is concerned, Anthony Kozlov died owing $400,000 to some very dangerous people, and those people have written off that debt as an unfortunate loss. But I'm still alive. What happens to me? That depends entirely on what you choose to do next. Anthony looked around my kitchen at the evidence of his crime spread across the table, at the police report declaring him dead. What are my options? Option 1, you leave tonight. You disappear forever and never contact Aria again. Anthony Reeves gets a divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, and then Anthony Reeves also disappears. You start over somewhere far away with a new name, a new identity, and you never run another con on another family. And option 2? There is no option 2. He was quiet for several minutes, processing everything. Finally, he looked up at me. "The money Aria thinks I stole from her account. Where is it?" "Safe. I've been monitoring your financial activities for months. The moment you transferred money out of her account, Mitchell's people transferred it to a secure account in Aria's name. She'll have access to it once the divorce is finalized." "You thought of everything." "I had 8 years to think about it." Anthony picked up one of the photographs from the table, the one showing him with Sarah Chen before her family's business collapsed. "Do you know what happened to them, the other women?" "Sarah rebuilt her family's restaurant business from scratch. It took 5 years, but she's more successful now than she ever was before you came into her life. Jennifer went back to school, became a social worker, and now helps other women who've been financially abused. Monica recovered from her breakdown and started a nonprofit organization that provides legal aid to victims of domestic fraud. They all survived. They all thrived. People are more resilient than predators like you give them credit for." He set the photograph back down. "What about Aria? Will she be able to forgive me?" "That's not your concern anymore. Your concern is disappearing before Detective Mitchell decides to make your fake death real." Anthony stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at his car in the driveway. "If I leave tonight, what guarantee do I have that you won't change your mind and send the police after me anyway? You don't, but you also don't have any other choice. The Russians think you're dead, which means you're safe from them. But that only works if Anthony Kozlov stays dead and Anthony Reeves disappears forever. And if I refuse, if I decide to stay and fight this?" I walked to the landline phone and picked up the receiver. Then I called Detective Mitchell and tell him that reports of Anthony Kozlov's death have been greatly exaggerated. He arrests you for fraud, domestic abuse, and extortion. The Russians figure out you're still alive and come looking for their money. And Aria becomes a target for people who solve their problems with violence. Anthony's shoulders sagged in defeat. "You really did think of everything." "Not everything. I didn't anticipate that you would be stupid enough to borrow money from Russian loan sharks. That complication almost derailed the entire plan. How long have you known about the Russians? Mitchell's people have been watching you for months. We knew about the loan, the missed payments, the threats. That's why we accelerated the timeline and staged your death when we did. So, everything that happened tonight, Aria walking here, me coming after her, all of this was planned?" "Not exactly. I hoped Aria would realize what you were and leave you on her own. The fact that she had to walk 68 miles to escape you tells me things got worse than I anticipated." Anthony was quiet again, staring out the window. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I did love her, you know. In the beginning, before I knew about the money. I believe you. But love isn't enough when it's competing with greed and desperation. What do I tell her? How do I explain leaving?" "You don't. You leave a note saying you can't handle the pressure of marriage and you need to start over somewhere else. Keep it simple, keep it believable, and don't give her any reason to look for you. She'll hate me." "She already hates you, Anthony. What you did to her tonight, emptying her account and threatening her, that destroyed whatever feelings she had left. Now you're giving her the chance to heal without having to worry about you coming back." He turned away from the window and looked at me. "You could have just had me killed. It would have been easier." "Probably. But I'm not a killer, and Aria wouldn't have been able to live with that knowledge, even if she never found out I was responsible. So instead, you're giving me a chance to disappear and start over. I'm giving you the chance to stop being a predator. What you do with that chance is up to you." Anthony walked back to the table and gathered up some of the documents, the ones that belonged to him. "These other women, the ones I hurt before, do they know about tonight? They know that Anthony Kozlov is dead. They know they're safe. That's all they need to know. Good, they deserve peace." I watched as he slipped the documents into his jacket pocket. "Anthony, if you ever come back, if you ever contact Aria again, if you ever hurt another family the way you hurt hers, our agreement ends. Mitchell has enough evidence to put you away for 20 years, and there are people who would be very interested to learn that Anthony Kozlov's death was premature. I understand. I hope you do, because this is the only second chance you're going to get." Anthony walked toward the front door, then stopped and turned back. Will you tell Aria that I'm sorry? Not for leaving, but for everything else? No. If you're really sorry, you'll disappear completely and let her move on with her life." He nodded once, then opened the door and stepped out into the darkness. I watched from the window as he got into his car and drove away, his taillights disappearing into the night. Above me, I could hear Aria moving around in her old bedroom, probably wondering what was taking so long. Soon I would have to go upstairs and explain that her husband was gone, that her nightmare was over, that she was finally safe. But first, I picked up the phone and dialed Mitchell's number one more time. "Phoenix here. The target has departed. Confirmed surveillance is tracking." "Confirmed. We have eyes on him. He's heading east toward the interstate." "Good. And Mitchell? Make sure he keeps going, all the way to the state line and beyond." "Copy that. What about the daughter?" I looked up at the ceiling where Aria's footsteps had finally stopped. "She's going to be fine. We all are." I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. For 8 years, I had been preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, I wasn't sure how to explain everything to Aria. How do you tell your daughter that her husband was a professional predator? How do you reveal that you've been protecting her with lies and deception for nearly a decade? I knocked softly on her bedroom door. "Aria, can I come in?" "Dad, is everything okay?" I heard voices downstairs and then a car leaving. Was that Anthony? I opened the door to find her sitting on the edge of her childhood bed, still wearing the torn clothes from her 68-mile walk. She had found some old bandages in her bathroom and wrapped her feet, but I could see bloodstains seeping through the white gauze. "We need to talk, sweetheart. There are things you need to know." "Where's Anthony? Did he leave?" "Yes, he's gone, and he's not coming back." Relief flooded her face, followed quickly by confusion. "What do you mean he's not coming back? Did you pay him? Did you give him money to leave me alone?" I sat down in the chair beside her bed, the same chair I used to sit in when she was little and had nightmares. "Aria, Anthony's real name is Anthony Kozlov. He's been married 3 times before you, always to women from families with money. Each time, he destroyed their lives and disappeared with whatever he could steal." She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "That's impossible." "I would have known. We've been married for 8 years. You knew Anthony Reeves, the man he pretended to be. You never met Anthony Kozlov, the man he really is." I spent the next hour telling her everything about the investigation I had commissioned, about the other women, about the pattern of manipulation and financial abuse. I showed her some of the documents Mitchell had gathered, watching as her face went through a dozen different emotions. "Sarah Chen, Jennifer Walsh, Monica Rivera," she repeated their names like she was memorizing them. "He destroyed all their lives. He tried to, but they survived and they rebuilt, just like you're going to." "Dad, why didn't you tell me any of this before? 8 years ago, when you first found out?" That was the question I had been dreading. "Because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. You were so happy with him in the beginning, so in love. If I had shown you evidence then, you would have thought I was just a jealous father trying to break up your marriage. So you decided to let me figure it out on my own. I decided to watch and wait and be ready to protect you when the time came. I've been monitoring your finances, your safety, your well-being for years. I knew this day would come eventually." Aria was quiet for a long time, processing everything I had told her. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "The money he stole from my account tonight, is it really gone?" "No. Detective Mitchell has been tracking all of Anthony's financial activities. The moment he transferred money out of your account, we secured it. You'll have access to everything once the divorce paperwork is processed." "Divorce paperwork?" "Anthony is going to disappear, Aria. He's going to send you a letter explaining that he can't handle marriage anymore and needs to start over somewhere else. You'll file for divorce citing abandonment, and it will be finalized without him ever appearing in court." "Just like that? He just vanishes from my life? Just like that?" She stood up and walked to her bedroom window, the same window she used to look out when she was a teenager, dreaming about her future. "What if he changes his mind? What if he decides to come back?" "He won't. Trust me on that." "Josh, how can you be so sure?" I had debated whether to tell her about the Russian loan sharks, about the staged death, about the elaborate plan Mitchell and I had executed. In the end, I decided she had been through enough trauma for one night. Because I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. He's more afraid of me now than he ever was of losing you. That wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. Anthony was afraid of the Russians, afraid of prison, afraid of what would happen if he didn't disappear completely. The fear would keep him away better than any restraining order. Dad, all those years when I thought you didn't like Anthony, when I thought you were being unfairly critical of him, you were actually protecting me. I was trying to. I just wish I could have done more to prevent him from hurting you. You did everything you could. I was the one who was too stubborn to see what was right in front of me. I stood up and walked over to where she was standing by the window. Aria, you were manipulated by a professional, someone who had perfected his techniques on 3 other women before you. This wasn't your fault. But the signs were there, weren't they? The way he isolated me from you, the way he always seemed more interested in your money than in our relationship. I ignored all of it because I wanted so badly to be loved. You were loved. You are loved. Just not by him. She turned away from the window and looked at me. I've been such a fool, Dad. 8 years of my life wasted on a man who never cared about me. Those 8 years weren't wasted. You learned things about yourself, about what you want and don't want in a relationship. You became stronger, even if you don't feel strong right now. I don't feel strong. I feel broken. Broken things can be repaired, Aria. Sometimes they're even stronger after they've been fixed. She walked back to her bed and sat down heavily. What happens now? Where do I go from here? You stay here as long as you need to. This is your home, and it always will be. You take time to heal, to figure out who you are when you're not being manipulated and controlled. And then you build whatever life you want to build. I don't even know where to start. You start with sleep. Tomorrow we'll call a lawyer to begin the divorce proceedings. We'll go to the bank and secure your accounts. We'll take care of the practical things first, and then we'll work on the emotional healing. Will you help me with all of it? Sweetheart, I've been waiting 8 years to help you. There's nothing I want more. She smiled for the first time since arriving at my door, a small, tentative smile, but genuine. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry I let him come between us. You didn't let him do anything. He was a professional at driving wedges between people. The important thing is that we found our way back to each other. I kissed her forehead and headed toward the door. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a busy day. Dad? She called as I reached the doorway. Thank you for everything, for never giving up on me. I'm your father, Aria. Giving up was never an option. I closed her door and walked back downstairs to clean up the evidence scattered across my kitchen table. As I gathered up the photographs and documents, my phone rang. Mitchell's number. How's she doing? He asked without preamble. She's processing. It's going to take time, but she's stronger than she knows. And our friend? Crossed the state line an hour ago, still heading east. Good. My people will keep tracking him for another few days, just to make sure he doesn't change his mind and turn around. Thank you, Mitchell, for everything. Just doing my job. Besides, guys like Kozlov give all men a bad name. I'm glad we could put him out of business permanently. After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of bourbon and sat down at my kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the sound of Aria moving around upstairs, probably getting ready for bed. For 8 years, I had lived with the weight of knowing my daughter was in danger, of watching her slowly disappear into Anthony's web of manipulation and control. Tonight, that weight was finally gone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Aria would need therapy to deal with the psychological damage Anthony had inflicted. She would need legal help to navigate the divorce. She would need time and space to rediscover who she was when she wasn't being controlled by a predator. But tonight, for the first time in 8 years, I could sleep peacefully, knowing my daughter was safe. 6 months later, I was sitting on my front porch watching Aria tend to the garden she had planted in my backyard. She was wearing old jeans and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she looked more like herself than she had in years. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Anthony had sent the letter exactly as we had discussed, claiming he needed to start over and couldn't handle the responsibilities of marriage. Aria had filed for divorce citing abandonment. And since Anthony never responded to any of the court documents, the divorce was granted by default. The legal proceedings had been surprisingly smooth. Detective Mitchell had helped us navigate the complexities of recovering Aria's stolen money and ensuring that all of Anthony's assets were properly distributed. Aria had even received a settlement from one of Anthony's previous schemes that Mitchell's investigation had uncovered. But the emotional healing had been much more complex. "Dad, come look at this," Aria called from the garden. "The tomatoes are finally starting to ripen." I walked over to where she was kneeling beside a row of tomato plants, their green fruit just beginning to show hints of red. She had thrown herself into gardening with the same intensity she had once devoted to trying to save her marriage. The physical work seemed to help her process everything she had been through. "They look good. Your mother would have been proud of this garden." Aria smiled at the mention of her mother, something she hadn't been able to do for years. Anthony had gradually poisoned her memories of everyone who had loved her before him, but those memories were slowly returning. "I've been thinking about Mom a lot lately, about the way she used to make us work in the garden together when I was little. I had forgotten how peaceful it could be. She always said that gardens teach you patience, that you can't rush growth, you can only create the right conditions and wait." "Aw, is that what you were doing with me? Creating the right conditions and waiting?" I sat down on the garden bench I had installed last month, watching as she continued to examine her plants. I was trying to. I wasn't always sure I was doing the right thing. You were. I understand now why you couldn't just tell me the truth about Anthony 8 years ago. I wouldn't have believed you. I had to discover it for myself. The therapy had helped her reach that understanding, Doctor. Sarah Martinez, the counselor Aria had been seeing twice a week, specialized in helping women recover from psychological and financial abuse. She had helped Aria understand that Anthony's manipulation techniques were sophisticated and deliberate, designed to make his victims doubt their own perceptions and instincts. "Dr. Martinez thinks I'm ready to start thinking about what I want to do next," Aria said, settling down on the bench beside me. "She says I've processed most of the trauma, and now it's time to focus on building a future." "What do you think you want to do?" "I've been thinking about going back to school, maybe studying social work or counseling. I want to help other women who've been through what I went through." That didn't surprise me. Aria had always been drawn to helping others, even as a child. Anthony had systematically crushed that impulse, convincing her that she was too weak and too damaged to help anyone. But it was coming back now, stronger than before. "That sounds like a perfect fit for you. There's a program at the community college that starts in the fall. I could get my bachelor's degree in social work in 3 years and then maybe pursue a master's degree in counseling. Whatever you decide to do, I'll support you completely. I know you will. That's one of the things I'm still getting used to, having someone in my life who actually wants me to succeed." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the late afternoon sun filter through the oak trees in my backyard. These quiet moments had become precious to both of us. For years, Aria had lived in a state of constant tension, never knowing when Anthony's mood would shift or what new crisis he would manufacture. The peace of simply sitting together without drama or manipulation was still something she was learning to trust. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think I'll ever be able to trust someone again, romantically, I mean?" It was a question she had been wrestling with for months. Anthony's betrayal had been so complete, so devastating, that the idea of opening her heart to someone else seemed almost impossible. "I think you'll learn to trust yourself first, and once you trust your own instincts again, you'll be able to recognize the difference between someone who wants to control you and someone who wants to love you." "How will I know the difference?" "Because someone who loves you will encourage you to be independent, to have your own friends, your own interests, your own money. They'll want you to be strong, not weak. They'll want you to succeed, not fail. Anthony always said he wanted those things for me, but then he made it impossible for me to achieve them. That's the difference between words and actions. Real love shows up in actions, not just words." A car pulled into my driveway, interrupting our conversation. I looked up to see Detective Mitchell getting out of his unmarked police car, a manila envelope in his hand. "Is everything okay?" Aria asked, a note of anxiety creeping into her voice. Even after 6 months, unexpected visitors still made her nervous. "I'm sure it's fine. Mitchell probably just has some paperwork for us to sign." But as he walked toward us, I could see something different in his expression. Not bad news exactly, but something significant. "Scott, Aria." He nodded to both of us as he approached. "Sorry to interrupt your evening, but I thought you'd want to know about this immediately." "What is it?" I asked. "We've been monitoring the other women Anthony victimized, keeping an eye on their recovery and making sure he hasn't tried to contact any of them. Today, we received some interesting news." He handed me the envelope. "Sarah Chen, Jennifer Walsh, and Monica Rivera have been in touch with each other. They've decided to start a support group for women who've been victims of financial and psychological abuse in relationships." I opened the envelope and found a letter addressed to Aria, along with some brochures and contact information. "They want to invite you to join them," Mitchell continued, "not as a victim, but as a survivor. They think your story, combined with theirs, could help a lot of other women." Aria took the letter from my hands and read it silently, her eyes growing wider with each paragraph. "They want me to speak at their first public meeting next month. They think hearing from someone who recently escaped could give hope to women who are still trapped." "What do you think?" I asked. "I think I'm terrified," she said honestly. "But I also think it might be exactly what I need to do." "You don't have to decide right now," Mitchell said. "But I thought you should know that your courage in leaving Anthony has already inspired other women. Word gets around in law enforcement circles. There are officers in 3 states who are using your story to help convince other victims to come forward." After Mitchell left, Aria and I went back inside to prepare dinner together, another routine we had established over the past few months. Cooking had become a form of meditation for her, a way to focus on creating something nourishing and positive. "Dad, I've made a decision," she said as she chopped vegetables for our salad, "about the support group, about that and about school and about everything. I'm going to do it all. I'm going to speak at their meeting. I'm going to start the social work program in the fall. And I'm going to stop being afraid of my own life." That sounds like a good decision. Anthony spent 8 years convincing me that I was weak, that I needed him to take care of me, that I couldn't survive on my own. But look at me now. I walked 68 miles to escape him. I've rebuilt my life from nothing. I've learned to garden, to cook, to manage my own finances. I'm not weak. I never was. No, you weren't. You were just convinced that you were. I want to make sure no other woman has to go through what I went through. And if sharing my story can help even one person recognize the warning signs and get out before it's too late, then everything I suffered will have been worth something. That night, after Aria had gone to bed, I sat on my front porch with a cup of coffee, looking up at the stars. My phone buzzed with a text message from Mitchell. "Target still in Montana, appears to be working construction under a new identity. No contact with previous associates or victims. Plan successful." I deleted the message and put my phone away. Anthony Kozlov was truly dead, and whoever the man in Montana was now, he was someone else's problem. My only concern was Aria, and she was finally truly safe. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Aria laughing on the phone in the kitchen. It was the first time I had heard her laugh freely in years, and the sound filled me with a joy I had almost forgotten was possible. "That was Sarah Chen," she told me when she hung up. "She's driving down from California next week so we can meet in person before the support group meeting. She said she wants to make sure I'm ready for how intense it can be, hearing other women's stories. Are you ready?" "I don't know, but I'm ready to try." 6 months ago, my daughter had arrived at my door broken, terrified, and convinced she had nowhere else to turn. Today, she was planning to help other women find their own strength and freedom. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's living so well, becoming so strong, that the person who tried to destroy you becomes irrelevant to your happiness. Anthony had tried to break my daughter's spirit, but instead, he had revealed just how unbreakable she really was. And now she was going to use that strength to make sure other women never had to suffer the way she had. That seemed like justice to me,